Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We are going to talk about some very, very important issues, and these issues concern your well-being, the crash. You know, Tom Hartman wrote a book a few, I guess it was in just before the election, right? The 2016 election. And his book was called The Crash. I think it was called The Crash of 2016. And the interesting thing about it is that, you know, he told me, I interviewed him a few weeks ago during our fund drive at KPFT. And he said, you know, Egberto, I wish we had named the book something else, because as it turns out, the crash didn't come in 2016 as the book anticipated, but he said he never actually assumed that the crash was coming in 2016. But you know how the book publishers are. That is what they wanted to show up on the books. So anyhow, folks, do remember that this is a call-in show. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The telephone number for the show, you know, is 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. And as I try to find my my cheat sheet here on my laptop, I guess we continue talking about what Tom Hartman had to say. He said that when he wrote the book, he had no intentions of putting that the crash was coming in 2016. What he wanted to show is that there are a whole lot of things in the economy that dictates the possibility of an impending crash. And of course, when the publisher comes out, they decide that they want to put a particular date on this crash. So what date did they put? Oh, it's going to be 2016. So they went ahead and made this crash 2016. Hi, Michael Rudnin. Welcome aboard the show. And anybody else that I possibly miss, we're going to have a good show for you today. Now, so again, he didn't assume that it was going to be 2016. Anybody who's looking at the stock market right now, they have to sit down and ponder, is this it? Is it the time? Is it now that it's happening? Well, you know, the truth of the matter is we don't know. We don't know exactly what the hell is happening right now with the stock market. But I can tell you one thing that I do know for sure, and that is that we are built on something that is very, very, we are built on something that we really can't trust, right? We are built on a system of smoke and mirrors. We're built on a system that is holding up on its, we don't even know what's holding it up, to put it bluntly. And the reason why is that it's held up by a whole lot of lies. It's held up by a whole lot of deficit spending. It's held up by the folks who control the markets, who have a certain amount of control to fool, how do we say it? To fool most of the people some of the times. But the thing about it is they won't be fooling them when all the die starts to fall. It just doesn't work that way, and eventually get caught up. Today's blog of the week is going to be not my own blog, but it's going to be a blog that was written by Tim Donaghy, and it's something that it's sort of a, what should I say, sort of a warning to Democrats as far as what they need to do with respect to narrative, because as it turns out right now, we all know where things are going. I mean, we all know that things are not really good. We all know that this is a facade. There is, as I have on the video right there, crisis ahead, crisis ahead. And it is something that we better start watching, and not only that, better start preparing for. And the thing is, the question is whether Democrats are really prepared for this impending what's going to happen. And, very few people really sit back there and think, is this stuff really going to happen? Are we going to collapse? Are we going to have these issues occurring? And the truth of the matter is, there's a darn good chance that it'll happen. So, what we're going to do today, and let me go ahead and cue a few things up here, because right now, as it turns out, there are some places that our video should be queued that it doesn't seem to have queued quite yet. So what we're going to do is take care of that before we get to the show. For those that are listening on Blog Talk Radio, do remember, and for you that are listening on Facebook Live as well, please remember that the call-in number is 646-716-5812. I would love to hear from you. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. So go ahead and give us a call. We would like to talk to you. What do you think? Do you think the crash is, when is a crash? I know most of you who listen to my show have heard me speak about it before. So when do you think that crash is coming? Is it impending? Is it coming soon? Is it coming later? When is it coming? Is today's 500 plus drop some sort of a notice? Is it something that is it something that the market is trying to say? Is there even really something called the market? Do we think there's really a market? I don't. This mythical market everybody always talks about, I don't really know what the hell they're talking about. Folks, if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share this on your wall, share this on your page, share this by Twitter, Tumblr, and all the other places where you normally share things. It's so important for us to do so. That is how we get people to watch. That is how we get people to see these things. The way Facebook and all these other channels have been working in the near term, they've changed their algorithms that makes it very, very difficult for political programs, specifically on the left like this one, to get aired. So we depend on you sharing. We depend on you after the show sending out the podcast when we have the podcast release. That is the only way we know for sure that folks are going to see the program. Going forward, coming along, we're going to be a bit more structured. I think for the we'll still remain a bit unstructured for the rest of the year, but when it comes to the beginning of next year, we're going to try to have some better structure, because we're talking about syndicating the program in other markets, which means we have to leave room, etc., for people to have commercials and whatever it is they are going to do on public stations that will grab onto these videos. So while we are a bit laissez-faire in the way we handle the programs right now, we may be a little bit more structured come next year. I just want you to know that, so that there are insert points for other organizations to cut and place their pro bono stuff and all that sort of stuff that people do with radio shows. So just warning you, for those of you who are used to our sort of a laissez-faire way of doing our politics and right. Again, if you're just joining us, folks, please remember to go ahead and share the program on your Facebook page, your Facebook wall, and everywhere else. It's important for us to get it going. Okay. What is the topic for today? The topic for today is titled Democrats. Well, you got to turn that down. Okay. Democrats must go bold and be ready for the stock market crash and economic collapse. You heard that. I hope you heard that, and I hope you heard that well. Democrats must be ready. Democrats must be ready. Again, come on, why am I getting those beeps? I don't want those beeps. Democrats must be ready. They must be ready for the impending crash, not only of the stock market, but the impending crash of the economic system. Am I serious? You bet I am. And, people say, oh, but you've been talking about this crash for a long time. Well, it's not only me. Tom Hartman and many others have been talking about it. And, you know, before 2008, we were talking about it as well. And it was realized. And the reason it was realized is because, for a fact, there's nothing holding this economy up. There's absolutely nothing that's holding this economy up right now. So, yes, there's going to be an impending collapse. So, subtitle of the show, or title of the show, Democrats must go bold and be ready for the stock market crash and economic collapse. And the subtitle, Donald Trump and his cabal have planted the seeds of destruction of the United States economy. The impending stock market crash and economic collapse mean another shot for Democrats to go bold. You know, we missed the opportunity. Democrats missed the opportunity after the 2008 collapse to really reform what our economic system looked like. That was a perfect opportunity then to create a new economy, to create the economy that we know we need, to create the economy that we know would serve everybody best. But instead, what did we do? We bailed out the folks who stole the money. We bailed out the folks who created all these instruments, these financial instruments. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about these financial instruments a little later, because I had a conversation with an airline pilot, a Trumpist in Starbucks today, nice guy, who's visiting out of town. And, you know, he made quite a few bucks doing what he did, and now he's living the life. He goes over to Central America, spends a month, lives in Florida, does well. And I'm very happy for the young man, because you know what? That is what we want for everybody. That is what we want for everybody. And he said something to me. Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and do the program. Then we go into the blog of the week. And then I tell you this story, because I want to expand on this story a whole lot, because he's representative of a whole lot of people. And I looked at him and I said, I gave him the card for the show. And I said, you know what, man, I really want you to start listening to the show. And in as much as I know you watch Fox News, I'm not asking you to stop watching Fox News. What I'm asking you to do, however, is also watch this show, listen to the things we talk about, the things that you agree with or not. You know, call into the show or drop me a line like most of you do. Most of the folks here would send an email like, Berto, I think what you said was full of crap, until I then explain it. And sometimes they agree with it. Sometimes they still think I'm full of crap. We explain, we go back and forth. The most important thing, though, is that we talk. But anyhow, make no mistake, all the signs are there for an economic collapse. It is likely to happen within the next 2 years, in my humble opinion. Given the president that we have, if Democrats do not start getting their narratives correct, they will take the blame for the result of the irresponsible economic policies of President Trump and his cabal. Democrats must start letting Americans know about the impending economic collapse and stock market crash. They must immediately use their either the impending economic destruction or catering of the stock market to affect the will of the people currently blocked by Republicans. How? Letting Americans know the correct change. That correct change can only come by voting out irresponsible, selfish, and politicians on the take from all parties. Notice I didn't say from one party. I said from all parties. I'm going to go to the blog of the week next, but since I have a caller on the phone, I'm going to bring the caller in, see if he has something, or he or she has something to add real quickly, and then we'll jump back to the blog of the week, and then we'll continue. So caller coming from Skype, I believe. Come on in. How can I be of assistance to you, my dear caller?
Yes, my dear friend, Egberto. How are you, sir?
Hey, how are you doing, sir? Talk to me.
Yes, this is Mike from Singapore.
Yeah, how are you doing, Mike?
I thank you very much. And yes, a stock market is going to go to the bottom. The reason is because we have a president that it says, I want to make American great, MAGA, MAGA. But unfortunately, he doesn't even give a damn about the people of the United States. Only he cares from his own pocket, get richer and richer and richer, aristocracy. And so as a result, of course, you know, things will get worse for other people like us and everybody else. And yes, I saw it CNN right now. They said that stock market was down. Last time I looked at it, it was like 567.
Right.
Close to 600
Right.
drops. So, I mean, this is the second day. And yesterday was 400, I believe. So already we came around again, 1,000 point down. And with the California fires, with the massive rains will come soon. And again, more damage is done to California. So these are man-made, catastrophes. Let's put it that way. And California is the number 6 economic power in the world.
Right.
Am I right or wrong?
Yes, you're right. California's economy alone, I think, actually, I thought it was 5th, but maybe it's 6th. I mean, it's probably bigger, in fact, than Germany. Germany is probably bigger. So we have Japan, China, Germany. I can't remember the other.
India, and then
right. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
And and then so it's very unfortunate for the California. And now I don't know. Have you heard about Yang2020.com? He is people of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
He wants really to give UBI to the people over 18, and he wants, because of automation. I talked to you probably last few weeks about automation, how much jobs are going to last globally, 60% of jobs.
Right.
So based on until we go transition to AI and other things, he said we will giving each one $1,000 UBI, plus we will give Medicare for all, and plus we give free education for all.
Right.
You need to check that website, Yang2020.com.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead and put it in the notes. I'm going to go ahead and check that out as well. I'll probably try to get that in the notes as well. So let me tell you this, Mike. Let me go ahead and do the blog of the week. Then I want to make a few comments about the discussion that I had with a young man in Starbucks. Very important discussion, I think. And then I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, please. Thank you very much.
Now, let's go ahead, folks. We can take up to 50 calls at the same time. So give us a call, 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5812. But, folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, weekly blog post. This isn't my words. These are the words of Tim Donaghy, from the Tim Donaghy show that he had several months ago, years ago. He does it sporadically now. But he wrote this paper yesterday, and I thought it was suited to sort of to buttress this discussion. But anyhow, he said, the title of the piece was called "Democratic Communications Need to Go Bold." Then he said, the Democratic House of Representatives needs to go bold with their communications to consolidate their gains for the 2020 elections. I want to remind anybody that's listening that having a great midterm election does not guarantee a great presidential election. Ask those folks who won in 2010. Ask those folks who won in 2014. Okay? It's not always great. I should have said 2010 and 2012 is what I should say. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a great next session. All right. Choosing Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House is a necessary but transitional step that needs to be accompanied by a Democratic Party leadership development plan. This may entail some aging committee chairmen to cede their public statements to younger committee members. It may also require message discipline among Democrats to stay positive, stay on issues, and state what's possible. This will minimize the old angry men of the Republican Party who lack constructive ideas and legislative principles. The Democratic Party must not allow the tired old methods of communication to continue. The old method has, for instance, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer standing at a podium with dutifully silent and somber fellow legislators in a half circle behind them as props. The Republicans do the same thing. How many times have we seen Mitch McConnell at the microphone flanked by Wyoming Senator Barrasso, Missouri's Roy Blunt, Texas's John Cornyn, and others? It's just old. It's weak. It's stifling. The Democratic House leadership should hire a press secretary to issue public statements and hold press conferences regarding legislation. Consider it the truthful, not angry alternative to Sarah Huckabee Sanders and White House messaging. It is understood Democratic House leadership press secretary does not speak for all members, but that could, at the very least, give the status of legislation, acknowledge differences being negotiated in committees, state the objectives of the legislation, and honestly shine disinfecting light on the political process. For example, if Democrats want prison sentencing reforms and pass legislation, the House press secretary could apolitically state how the legislation is being held in the Senate and state the Democrats hope the Senate will also pass the measure. This lets the media and public know about health care reform, deficits, immigration reform, education, banking, protections, and matters near and dear to us. A professional press secretary could keep the Democrats' message positive, non-political, and show the public that Democrats are the legislative adults in the room. This kind of coverage of legislation and the legislative process has not been done and would be a refreshing change from the call cast by Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, and soon-to-be appalling McCarthy and their semi-circles of sycophants. Continuing. The Democratic legislatures should be encouraged to communicate to their constituents and appear on talk shows, but on a national level. The press secretary could transform the national political narrative from anger, entrenchment, obfuscation, and pettiness to something better, civil dialogue. I believe the person best suited to pioneer the new Democratic House leadership press secretary would be Josh Earnest. Look him up. He's President Obama's former press spokesperson. He's familiar and friendly with the media. He's relatively young and positive. In a phrase, he's everything the Republicans are not. It could transform democratic and governmental communications. The country is ready. Go bold. Now, that piece, the reason I wanted to read that is how one talks about governing in a sensible manner, which he is absolutely right about that. Tim is absolutely right about that. What comes then? What comes beyond doing what's necessary to show that this is a party that governs? And this is the important thing here. What has to come next is the narrative. And he talks about a narrative that is apolitical. I talk about a narrative that is middle class centric. And the reason I don't say apolitical is middle class centric denotes some sort of a political spin, a political take, or whatever you call it. But I think it is time that middle class America, poor America, working class America understand that what they vote for really matters. One of the reasons they don't vote, one of the reasons they are quiet is that they don't quite get quite get the alliance. They don't quite get the connection between voting and their will being executed and their wants being executed. That is the reason why most Americans don't vote. Now, you have a lot of elitists that may come out there, both on all sides, that may come out there and they kind of give those people who don't vote, they give them a hard time. I had a friend on a couple of weeks ago. She was talking about withholding the vote. And she wanted to purposefully withhold the vote for a reason, right? My thing is, I don't agree with her on withholding the vote, because I think enough of the vote is being withheld. That example is already given. Enough of the vote is being withheld. What I honestly think is Folks need to have that feeling that the vote that they put out there, that when they say they're going out there to vote, that somehow it really, really matters. Now, I'm not talking about this from conjecture or from what I read. I'm talking about being on the ground in several neighborhoods, not only white neighborhoods, not only black neighborhoods, but Latino neighborhoods. And Latino is not a good description. I was talking to this guy in the thing, because Latinos just, you speak Spanish. Folk that speak Spanish have a lot of different ideologies, from conservative to very, very liberal. So, I mean, when we talk about Latino neighborhood, we have a stereotype that doesn't really hold, that we shouldn't really be using, because it really doesn't hold, but for practical purposes we do. Now, most of these people don't vote. That, a lot of these people who I spoke to didn't vote because they honestly did not think it mattered. I mean, even they can talk about, the Supreme Court, the change in the Supreme Court. These people are at a level in their lives where the changes that the Supreme Court may make to business or healthcare or whatever doesn't really mean much to them. Even those that are on Obamacare. And when you think about it, you can finally really understand that, right? Because, I mean, one of the women that I was spoke to about, one of the reasons you have to make sure that the House goes Democratic is because they could get rid of Obamacare and all of that. Her response was, and how is that going to affect me? My Obamacare deductible is, I don't know how much, and I can't afford to pay that anyway. So, I mean, whether they kill Obamacare or not or what, it just doesn't matter, because they don't do anything that really helps me. I mean, so these are the things that you really have to sit down and understand from people when they start to try to explain to you why it is that they vote the way they do. And as it turns out, I need to fix a few things here. But anyhow, we have to start understanding what they're talking about when they really start talking about why it is they vote the way they do. Or they vote, or they, for that matter, or they don't vote the way they don't do. Okay. This conversation, I really want to talk about this conversation that I had with this young man. He was talking about being retired, and he's a retired airline pilot, and he lives in Florida, and he's a surfer, and he spends a month in Central America. And I found the story very intriguing. So, we kind of got into a conversation. Later on, I don't remember how we got to it, but I showed him what the topic of discussion was today about: the crash of the stock market and the crash of the economy. And his first words were, don't talk about that, because, well, his funds are in the stock market, and he has a financial planner who takes care of his all his assets, and, he can live that easy life that he has now, which he's earned. He was a pilot for a long time, and when his wife got sick, he took care of his wife, and now he's living the life that he goes out, he can travel as he pleases, etc., etc., etc. So, he wasn't happy when I told him the crash was coming and whatever, but then he kind of recoiled, and he said, but anyway, I have a bottom. In other words, he have an insurance policy on some of his, that's what his financial planners told him, right? Not to worry. On the backside, you are insured. The finances and all the monies that you have is insured. And so he felt safe that, everything is going to be okay, because even if these guys make a bad mistake, somehow his money is safe because there's some insurance there. Then I started to explain to him about things called credit default swaps, and I started to tell him about how insurance companies worked and the reinsurance market and all these different issues. And I then said, if your financial planner told you that insurance policy really protects you in a crisis, then he's a fraud. Because I reminded him that the way a lot of these things work, and all, especially with a lot of rules being skirted and not followed, etc., insurance company A may insure insurance company B, who then may be insured by insurance company C, who then may be insured by insurance company D, who then may be reinsured by insurance company A. So B insures A, C insures B, D insures C, and A insures D. So as it turns out, we could get into, or rather D insures A, as it turns out, we get into a circular loop of collapse. Something also that happened in 2008. So you may think your investment is safe and away from a lot of what occurs, but you could be very wrong. So I started to explain that to him, and he kind of took it, and I said, so what's going on right now is with all this deregulation and what Trump he said, you know, you notice that I was really giving Trump a hard time, and he said, well, you know, things worked out pretty well with Trump. And I'm like, not really. He's the one who's going to be screwing with your retirement right now, because if this collapse happens now, you could be in dire straits. Well, I wasn't going to vote for Hillary. I said, well, look, and I don't know anybody who particularly likes Hillary. I mean, the baby boomer women, and, you know, I love my baby boomer women who love her because, I mean, she is almost their last chance of seeing a woman elected president. And one of the reasons I had double takes on whether to support Hillary or not versus Bernie was because I thought this was a qualified woman who could break the ceiling, and I was willing to forget about a lot of the flaws to get her to break the ceilings, the glass ceiling, and thereafter immediately force her hand with her activism. In other words, what I'm saying, I was willing to vote for this woman knowing that we were going to come at her hard after she was elected. We were going to hit her very hard as far as we need to do this. We have to have these progressive policies out there. We must have these progressive policies to support students, to support the poor, to support health care for all that sort of stuff. We were going to be hitting very hard on. Well, the young man comes back and he says, well, I couldn't have voted for her. So I looked at him and I said, look, I want to ask you one favor. I know you're a Fox News viewer. I know that you love your Donald Trump, etc. But what I want you to do is start listening to our program. I'm not asking you to stop listening to Fox News, but I'm asking you to listen to our program as well to see where we're coming from, the things that we support, and how does it really differ from the things that you think you would really want yourself. And I gave him a card, and I told, by the way, I also told him, you know, you should really support this show as well. It's not just about watching the show, but you need to support the show as well, because we are offering an alternative voice that just may enlighten you and give you an opportunity to, I didn't want to quite say think straight, but yeah, let's say it, to think straight, because it is so important that even these people who think they have it made, they saw the stock market going crazy. I remember we went to dinner with my wife, and a friend of hers who plays tennis with her and her husband who left his corporate job to do day trading. He as we were talking, and he realized that I knew quite a bit about the stock market. I'm not in it, and you know, I'm not making any money in there or anything. I left it long time ago because I thought it was gambling and it was against my morals. So that's one of the reasons I left most of it. But anyhow, I explained to him, and we were talking about all these issues about the stock market, etc., etc., etc. And this guy says why he loved Trump so much was that he was making so much money on the stock market. It was obscene. He said sometimes he made so much money in one day, more money than he made as a corporate, whatever it was that he did at the corporation, that he was ashamed of what he made. And that's why he loved Trump. And Trump gave a lot of people that sugar high. And that's the issue. Let me go ahead and get this caller in. 802, you are hot. Come on in, 802.
Yes, hello, sir.
How are you
doing
sir?
Today?
Come on in.
Doing well.
What's your name?
Ryan.
Hi, Ryan. Come on in. Do you have anything to add to the discussion?
Oh, I just wanted to talk about economic collapse in general.
Sure.
I didn't hear you talk about preparedness at all. Do you have any thoughts on that?
How to be prepared for the economic collapse?
Correct.
No, the truth of the matter is I don't have. I'll be honest with you, that is above my pay grade. How do you prepare for it? My thing is, as opposed to preparing for it, to stop it. But I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about it.
Alrighty. Well, I've been interested in preparedness for quite a few years now. You may recall I called in last night. I'm the libertarian.
Oh, you are the libertarian guy. Okay, come on in, Ryan. Talk to me.
Yes, sir. Hello again. Great. So 802 is Vermont. It's a very liberal state.
Right.
Home of Bernie Sanders and all that.
Right.
And, I used to be certainly very liberal, and transitioned more towards the right, towards.
Well, I mean, you're still liberal if you're libertarian.
libertarian.
You just have some conservative economic type policies.
Yeah. Right. It's not exactly the best description, but economically conservative and civilly liberal and economically conservative.
Right.
So to speak. Vermont was one of the first states to legalize gay marriage and, and all that. Very progressive, socially. But economically, there's a lot of socialism and all of that kind of talk around here. Anyways, it was. I just wanted to say that it was. The idea of economic collapse and some more extreme possible disasters and catastrophes that got me interested in preparedness. And it was preparedness mostly that kind of pushed me more towards the libertarian end of the spectrum.
Sure.
I don't know if you have any questions for me. I can talk a little bit about preparedness.
Well, first of all, I think what you're saying is you agree with my assessment that a collapse is imminent.
I don't know about imminent. I'm a younger guy. Certainly within my lifetime, I could see it being possible. Historically, no country, no currency has lasted longer than a few hundred years, maybe a few thousand if you're lucky with some of them. But an economic shift, an economic change, a change of currencies, a reevaluation of the currency is certainly inevitable. Is it imminent? I'm not exactly sure.
Well, imminent is relative,
that's right. I'd like to be a little skeptical as far as within the next few years. I mean, there was Y2K and, what was it, 2012, the, end of the world kind of 2012. There's always been.
Let me just qualify something that you're saying, because it's important before you continue. I don't want, when people look at something like Y2K and say, well, Y2K was supposed to be a disaster and look at what happened. I'm a software engineer, mechanical engineer. I design software systems, the whole works. And all the software that I wrote, which had to do with timestamp, some of them had to do with timestamping and so forth. Back in the 90s, I corrected for the time scope. So I was never, ever concerned that Y2K was really a problem. It was mostly a capitalist form of exploiting a notion, of exploiting a reality. So I want people to understand that Y2K was always a fraud. And I was talking about it as being a fraud from back then, because those of us who write software understand that those two digits were always compensated for either in the newer software or they were mitigated with the rollover. Go ahead, my friend. Continue.
Right. I'm a younger guy. I'm 27. My father was and still is a computer programmer.
Right.
It's in my blood, I like to say.
Right.
I'm not a computer programmer, but I picked up a few languages, amateur and all that.
Right.
But I understand what you mean. I can understand a certain amount of concern with Y2K and all that, but overall, it didn't prove to be nearly as big an issue as a lot of people thought it was going to be.
Let me tell you, it's funny because I left over I just want to tell folks about something that I did. I left over $300,000 on the table because, as opposed to when it was time for software corrections, and all the companies that bought my software from me were requesting upgrades for a Y2K upgrades, as opposed to just selling them something with a few timestamps changed and to say, hey, you got the software. I went ahead and said, no, when we designed the software, it was already there. I calculated that I left over $300,000 on the table. Imagine that. Over $300,000 just for being honest and saying our software was good from the beginning. Just needed to get that out there. Go ahead, my friend.
Right. Well,
if you had charged $300,000, I'm sure your customers wouldn't have been very happy, and they would have lost some trust and faith in you as their supplier, and perhaps switched companies in the future to somebody who wouldn't be a jerk.
Right.
You know, so if it may have gained you $300,000 worth of value in the future that you didn't see by not charging them. You know what I mean?
Well, I could use that $300,000 now. Go ahead. Anyhow, go ahead, my friend.
Anyways, so yeah, preparedness in general. Did you have any kind of questions about that?
I don't understand what you mean by preparedness. So I'm interested to hear what you're talking about.
Right. So the idea of economic collapse in general, a very vulnerable part of our economy is the supply chain. I work for a beverage distributor. You know, I see parts of the distribution chain towards the more customer side of it, but if there was any kind of disruption with oil or gasoline or diesel, the tractor trailers that provide our goods to the stores simply wouldn't be able to make it. You know, if there was any kind of disruption with oil, store shelves would be empty overnight. You know, stores do truck to shelf kind of inventory, and there's a certain term for it. I'm not remembering exactly, but you know, you don't order more product than you need. So the stores only have 48 hours worth of supply there. So and a lot of people don't have more than 48 hours worth of food in their house. So if the food isn't at the store and you can't buy it, where are you going to get it? You know, society's only about 3 meals away from going crazy, so to speak.
That's most of the cities, though, right?
Cities and out in the country, it's surprising how many people go to the supermarket on the way home every night to bring home food. They don't have more than a week or two of food, and you don't have to go all crazy about some kind of gasoline worldwide national problem or an EMP or a nuclear attack or anything. Just simply Vermont, for example, is northern. We have snow. If the power lines go down and trees are across the road, like my aunt-in-law just a couple of years ago, they live on a road with 2 exits out in the middle of nowhere, and they couldn't get out of their house for about a week, and they lost power for a few days. What are you going to do then if you only have 24 hours worth of food in your house and you're stuck there for 7 days? What are you going to do? If it's the city, maybe it's flooding or earthquakes or, every geographic area has some kind of different concern. But just about anywhere you go, up here in Vermont, we don't have earthquakes, we don't have tornadoes, we don't have flooding, but we do have ice storms. Like back in 1998, there was a huge ice storm. I remember seeing that as a kid. Just trees were just covered in ice. It was beautiful to an 8-year-old, but kind of scary, and for an adult, for my parents, couldn't get to work, and you're kind of just stuck at home.
What are you telling our audience about preparedness? Tell me a little bit about what you do, or what you think people should do, assuming that some kind of disruption is going to happen, whether in the imminent or near or whatever.
Right. Well, it's important to note that the larger the disaster, the more people it affects, the less likely it is to happen. Right? A dinosaur-level asteroid could come and destroy the entire planet, and you wouldn't know it until it got here. But the odds of that are extremely low. On the flip side, things that happen to just you and your family, being diagnosed with cancer, losing a job, things that happen to a neighborhood, like an ice storm or flooding, or something that could happen to a whole city, like some kind of contagion or virus, and you're locked in your house for a week, quarantined. Those smaller disasters are more likely. So it's glamorous to be prepared for the end of the world and the zombie apocalypse, but what's most likely to happen to you is a job loss or your car breaks down. 99% of many disasters you'll face can be solved with money. You can buy more food. If a tree falls through your roof, you can go out and buy tarps and pay for the guy with a chainsaw to clear your yard. If your tire falls off your car, having $1,000 in reserves can buy you a rental and car repairs. Money, just having spare reserves of money is going to be the most flexible to help you. So I don't live paycheck to paycheck, but I'm not very far from it. My wife and I, we're one job loss away from being pretty screwed. should we do more to prepare? Probably. And we have a baby on the way, so that kind of adds a whole other level to it. But just simply having extra money around is a great first step. And then, preparing for, maybe having 3 days worth of food or a week's worth of food. You don't have to go crazy and buy a whole pallet worth of MREs that you're never going to eat anyways. Just simply every time you go to the supermarket, if you usually buy 1 can of Manwich, buy 2. If you little things like that, incremental changes, not big lifestyle changes. And if the end of the world doesn't come, you eat the food like you usually do and cycle it through.
Well, at
first in, first out.
28, you sound like a very responsible young man. So kudos to you, and kudos to your dad, who we share program in kind, which gives me that positive feeling for your old man already.
Thank you, sir.
But anyhow, let me tell you, thank you for calling in. I'll put your mic on. Your mic on hold. If you want to talk again, just push the number 1. I want to go ahead and start reading some of the stuff from Facebook Live. So here we go. Let's see what our people have to say on Facebook Live, which is coming up as I speak. I want to make sure. Sometimes I miss coming to know. Okay, here we go. Michael Rudnin, watching on my cell phone today. Great. Look, thank you so kindly for you with your cell phone and watching. $1 trillion deficit is what's holding up the system at this pace, less than a decade before interest payments exceed our military spending. I spoke about that a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and a lot of Americans don't understand that, Rudnin. I'm glad that you mentioned that. One of the biggest expenses on our budget is the interest on our loan. You get a credit card that has 18% interest rate, and then you take a look at, you're paying a whole lot of money every month, and somehow it's not dropping by the amount you thought it was dropping. Why? Because a lot of that money that you're paying to drop the balance is actually interest. With our federal government is worst, because what we're doing is it's not like we are dropping the principal. We're not dropping the total amount owed. We are constantly owing more money every single year. All those tax cuts that we give are horrendous, because unless a tax cut really, really pays for itself, unless when you give somebody more money, you generate such economic activity that more money comes in, that tax cut is a fraud. And that's why the Trump tax cut was a fraud. Let's explain real quickly what, and because I know those of you who are here all the time hear me say this before, but a lot of new people are here. Let me tell you what that tax fraud really was, okay? Number one, Donald Trump allowed people who rested their money overseas because they didn't want to bring it in. They were waiting till they could buy the president who would allow them to bring the money in at a very lower tax rate. That meant bringing that money in cost the taxpayers money they would have otherwise had. Now, the promise that Trump claimed these people made to him was that when they brought that money back, they would hire more people, they would pay more wages. They didn't. Most of the money they brought back was used for what? Stock buybacks. That is another form, and yet another form of theft. And let me tell you how. When you have tax buybacks, it increases the price of the stock because you have less shares outstanding. Because you have less share outstanding, the individual prices of those shares go up. Guess what's the magic in America's economy? We don't call capital gains, which means that the price increase in the stock, if you cash it out, that should be income, right? Just like the working man has income that he makes. When that stock is sold, that increase in income, they call capital gains, is not taxed at the same level that the working man's income is taxed. So the guy who goes out there and sling a hammer and cuts grass and programs computers and do all these things, his tax rate could be up to 38, 39%. And that guy who sits down on his butt at his pool watching his stock his stocks go up because there's a stock buyback, because these companies brought some money back into the country at a lower tax rate. He made a ton more money sitting on his butt and paying a lesser tax rate. And then the deficit, so he makes money, or he or she makes money, bringing the money back in, right? So bringing money back in for a stock buyback, which increases the amount of money that they take in. Second, because it was done with deficit spending, guess who loans America the money other than China? Wealthy people, the same people who got the tax cut, loan us back the money that they didn't pay in taxes so that we deficit spend with that. And what do they get for loaning us that money? We pay them interest. That's that interest that Mr. Rodnin was just talking about. So they continue to make money on the money they brought in and the income that they got appreciated on. It boggles the mind, the forms in which these folks make money on the backs of the poor. And people say, well, wait a minute. They earned that money. No, they did not. Is Bezos worth $100 billion or more? Hell no. Bezos legally made that money. He made that money from the appreciation of his stock. He made that money from the stock options that he has. He made that money in a lot of different ways. But every single cent, every single penny that he makes came from the labor, the work, the wherewithal, the knowledge, the intellect of thousands of employees. Thousands of employees made Bezos money. And because one click was his idea, something that stopped me from making a product that I explained in As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Book, my book that you can get on Amazon. Again, Class Warfare, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Book. He makes, because of that little patent he had and because he had this idea of selling, he makes all this money. And somehow we have the gall to believe that he earned that. We have mental slavery. We are most Americans are mental slaves or enslaved in the mind, because we don't understand that the way the economic system works and the way rewards are paid in this economy has nothing to do with your worth or what you provide to society, but how the laws of the economic laws were written to rip it all out of you, to take, for those who can take advantage, or those who are willing to take advantage of the system as it stands, to pilfer you. It's a different thought process. We were indoctrinated into believing that somehow these capitalists did things that's deserved, that somehow they earned it. My brothers and my sisters, you earned it. You did. You were a secretary. You earned it. You sweep the floors. You earned it. You made that operation move. You earned it. Every extra dollar he has is the money and partaking of the profits that was taken from you. Until we get within our minds that the current economic system is a form of slavery. Just like I always talk about the corporate slavery, that corporations really enslave you. The only thing is that those who are in the top of the corporate ladder are enslaved with a bit more luxury. But make no mistake. Make no mistake. The rich in this country are not rich out of their own doing. They're rich from what they were able to take from you. It's a different form of thinking because you were indoctrinated in a different manner, folks. For those who listen to the program, they've heard me say some of this before. Anyhow, continuing, Michael Rodnin. Democrats should have persecuted the banksters. Absolutely right. That was responsible for middle class losing 40% of their wealth. Rodnin, you have it on the money. The ACA didn't go far enough. You have it on the money. We needed Medicare for all. Better to have a friend watch The Big Short than HBO's. Oh, yes. I didn't watch it, but I read some excerpts from it. It looks like my friend, my libertarian friend, want to say something. I know that he didn't like some of what I said, so I want to bring him in real quickly before I continue. say your quick piece because I want to continue reading from some of my folks, my dear friend. But come on in, Ryan.
Yes, hello again. Thank you. You claimed that the rich are stealing from.
Yes, sir, I did.
From the poor, from the workers.
Yes.
I would disagree, and I was wondering why you would say that they are stealing.
Let me explain. It's not stealing from a legal standpoint. It's stealing from a moral standpoint. Stealing from a legal standpoint, look, they're following the laws. They're not doing anything the law doesn't tell them to allow them to do. Remember, we talk about the fiduciary responsibility of those who work for the corporation is to the shareholders, the masters. Those are the people who run it. When I talk about stealing, however, you said you work for a company that distributes. Perfect. You work very hard. Now, the person who owns that company, whatever, after you've done your job and after they've sold all those products, they made X amount of dollars. But they made a deal with you where they only pay you another X amount of dollars. Okay? Now, the extra money that they make that they didn't pay you, that they didn't pay for products, that they didn't pay for electricity, goes into the pockets of a few people. Then somehow we were taught to believe that, okay, they earned it. They earned that your excess labor, your excess provided to them is what they made after they paid you out. In an ideal world, in my opinion, and not only in my moral opinion, in an ideal world, after everybody's been paid X amount of stuff, that money, the profits should be distributed proportionally to everybody in the company because you are the ones who made it. But as it turns out, we have this fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. We have overpaid executives. And that is how the system was written. It was designed. It is man-made. It isn't something that can't be changed. And what I'm saying is we should be working towards changing to have a more equitable system based on people's real worth.
Well, I don't see how I'm being morally stolen from in a moral sense.
I know you don't, because that's not how we were taught. You don't see that when if that company makes a whole lot of money, that you were a piece of the reason it made the money. And if you were the piece of the reason it made the money and you're not compensated for the money that was made, that's immoral. You made it, but somebody else is going to get rich from it. And as a libertarian, you should think that as well.
Well, about just some rough back of the napkin numbers. I sold about $2 million worth of product last year.
Okay.
And my salary was in 5 digits.
Good.
So if you look at it that way, it's like, I sold $2 million. Why aren't I getting paid $1.9 million?
No.
But there's the people in the office, the truck drivers, you know what I mean.
I'm saying after that, after you've been paid in your 6 digits is what you got paid, right? 6 digits. After you paid
less than 6 digits.
Less than 6 digits. Okay, whatever you made after.
Right.
Tell me, what was the profit for the company?
I don't know.
Okay, what I'm saying is I have a small work for you to do because I'm off to shut the show down in a minute. Find out what the profit was for the company. Tell me how many employees the company have, and then I'll tell you how much money was stolen from all of you guys. Okay, so come back with me on that, my brother Ryan. All right.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you, sir. Now, folks, I'm going to have to kind of close on the show, but I want to go real quickly to Ledo. Egberto talks about Y2K, and it sounds like global warming in 2018. Ledo, if you were, I thought you were an engineer, but I may be wrong. Global warming is real, and the evidence is all there. I am so sorry that so many people buy the indoctrination coming from folks who are not educated enough to really... That's difficult. I got to close the show down. My name is Egberto Willie. Before that, I have to do my ask one more time. I hadn't done it at all today. Folks, please, 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 please. This is Politics Done Right, and we do need your support to stay alive. We need you to go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. Again, that is patreon.com/politics done right. Please remember this. It is very important for us to keep progressive shows on air. Why? Why do we want to keep progressive shows on air? We need to keep progressive shows on air to ensure that we continue to tell Americans the truth. Why? We are all indoctrinated in such a manner that we do not realize our worth. We are not paid our worth. Nobody is given their worth. liberalism, the progressive narrative that I'm given, the progressive information that I'm given. What I'm trying to do here in people's minds is for everybody to understand and reward themselves. Or let me back up, because I want to say this right. Why should you support a Politics Done Right or progressive media that's given this type of information? Look, there's one thing Americans have been indoctrinated for decades. Americans have been indoctrinated for decades. They have been made to believe that somehow the economic system that we have is divine, and that somehow a few people who are the ones that control most of it or deserve it of it. A progressive program like this tries to give the reasons, the impetus to you, to tell you why that isn't so. With evidence, not only with evidence, with morality and much more. Why it is that it is time for all of us to fight for what we are worth. Fight for what is ours. And not only that, but to make sure that we change the economic system in such a manner that, one, we recover what was stolen, and two, we make this a system where everybody can partake on, not in some sort of a utopian, false utopian way, but in a real utopian way, where we work, where we all do what's necessary based on our qualifications, etc., and move on. One of the goals of Politics Done Right is first to tell us about this system, how it really works, and not only how it really works, how we must change it, or how we should change it, to ensure that all of us play on the same playing field, and to ensure that we don't have a corporatocracy that uses us, to ensure that none of this is possible. My name. So please contribute to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. I'm writing a new book, How to Make America Utopia. Those of you who sign up and become subscribers, which is very, very cheap, pennies on the dollar, will get the opportunity to read the chapters as I write it. And not only that, of course, when the book is complete, you get the entire book. And we can discuss the book in the How to Make America Utopia group that you can find on Facebook. And if you have an idea that we use, we will credit you in the book. We'll attribute it to you in the book, cite you in the book, of course, with your permission. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES, that is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.